and get up. Now let's turn. Get up and get up. Now let's turn. Now let's turn. Get up and get up. Now let's turn. Now let's turn. Get up and get up. and get up. Now let's get up and get up. Now let's get up and get up. Now let's get up and get up.
Hello, good morning, good evening, good afternoon. My name is Tucker Johnson, and I am your host today as we experience Nimdzi Live, where we talk about the latest and greatest in translation, localization, internationalization, culturalization, and all that fun stuff global companies need to delight their international customers, or at least not to piss them off too much. On this program, we invite guests who like to have fun and have some value to add for our audience of globalization professionals. I'm always eager to provide a platform to those with a good story or a good data set. So let us know if there are any topics you'd like covered or guests we should reach out to for future episodes. If you haven't already done so, now's your opportunity to subscribe to or follow Nimdzi Insights on your social media platform of choice. We are coming to you live today on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, formerly known as Twitter, and probably a couple others. So wherever you're joining us, welcome. And if you follow us, you will be the first to be notified when we publish new research or schedule new live events like this. So I'm going to get right to the chase here and skip a lot of the standard plugs that I give here. This is our second live stream of the day. So those of you guys joining us for the double feature, then welcome back to the show. In today's episode, we're going to be diving deep into the intricate tapestry of localization in the digital era. Our focal point will be an insightful article that delves into the evolution of language technologies and the tug-of-war between human expertise and machine efficiency. As the language industry experiences unprecedented growth driven by technology and investor interest, there's an undercurrent of challenges: the mental and emotional toll on professionals, the consequences of over-relying on AI, and the potential loss of uniquely human touch in content creation. Can the industry strike a balance between the embracing innovation and ensuring the well-being of its professionals? As we unpack the context of this article, which, by the way, is in the June issue of Multilingual Magazine. Let's see if I can find what page it's on. It's on page 53 for those following along, Human in the Loop. So we're going to be unpacking this and highlighting the importance of retaining human values while navigating the wave of technological advancements. Our guest today is Didzis Grauss, and he is the owner of and Chief Revenue Officer, and I'm sure I mispronounced that, so apologies, but welcome
No, it's
anyways.
fine.
You're the Chief Revenue Officer and owner of Native Localization, where you specialize in paving seamless pathways for businesses to venture into global markets. DG's expertise lies in developing and devising strategic localization growth hacks, establishing robust operations at scale, and providing consultations on technological best practices and infrastructure design. He is driven by a fervent passion for shaping the foundational and operational blueprints for software companies to achieve impeccable global market integrations through localization. Welcome to the show, DG, and thank you for your contribution to Multilingual Magazine. It was a great article. I really enjoyed reading it.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad everyone's enjoying it
It-
as much as I hear about it.
I could tell, but when I was reading your article, I could tell, I got the distinct impression like this was something that you had, this was a topic you had something to say about, and you've been waiting for a while, like
Yeah,
a while to speak out about it, because it came through in your article, let's just say.
yeah, yeah. It sort of felt like a snowball idea that, as I said in the background, it's everything led to it. Kind of, I was. It started on I think last year's November issue on at Multilingual. So all the issues after that, they just piled on this ongoing excitement about artificial intelligence, and this, as I love to call it, it's just falling in love like fast and hard about technologies. And I think we've been there before. I think it's not the first technological breakthrough that we have in language technology. It happened before with translation memories
Yep.
and cat in translation. I think either way it repeats itself, and it just begs the question again, the human value and the specter of human involvement in all this. So yeah.
Yeah, it's a topic that we're no stranger to in the language services industry, which is new technology comes on the market. Everybody kind of freaks out. Some people leave the industry because they're convinced they're not going to have jobs in 5
Oh,
years. And then eventually, the hype curve comes back down, and we kind of learn to live with it a little bit and figure out what's happening. And this is, I don't want to say it's no different with the rise of artificial intelligence, because it is different. There's something different about it, but there's also some stuff that are the same about it. So I don't think it's going to be exactly like the past with the introduction of TMS or MT or anything like that, but there's going to be things that we can learn from the past, certainly, on it. I'll kick us off here with, I pulled some quotes from your article. Sorry, I've got birds here. I pulled some quotes from the article. Let's get me off screen. Talking about the proliferation in language technology out there, just to kind of set the scene for what we're talking about. You say, we are living in the most innovative era in the history of the language industry. Nimdzi's recent language technology landscape analysis revealed an astounding increase from roughly 500 language technology solutions in 2017 to more than 800 in 2022. This is most likely helped by the increased investor interest in the industry in recent years, and if history is any guide, this trend is not going away anytime soon. Alongside the massive initiative to create more solutions, the need for a qualified workforce to orchestrate the increasing number of systems is growing as well. Although there are estimations by the World Economic Forum that by 2025 technology will create 12 million more jobs than it will destroy, there is a looming question about the nature of these jobs and what emotional toll these jobs are going to create on people that choose to do them. And I think this really kind of summarizes very succinctly the problem statement that we're facing here in our industry, and kind of summarizes how I feel about it too. Is like, I don't think the number of jobs in our industry is going to decrease necessarily. I think, though, that how we do the work in our industry is going to be changing, and the functions of those jobs may be changing as well. And I'm interested to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, if you look at the years and information that we have here, it's by the end of 22, I think the the amount of software that got generated after the introduction of AI, I think we are seeing hundreds per week now. So it just only picked up way faster than anyone anticipated. So in terms of how the jobs will look like, I think we have some idea. I think, first of all, it's important to understand that translation and localization is a creative profession first. So how will this be adapted to, because everyone will be required to work with some sort of technology to just scale up and just not fall back. So we are here in the crossroads of having our creativity challenged or pushed by the technology that we are forced to use. So I think it's all about the perfect spot to just combine those two, because there's no other way creativity can survive, because it will be, in my opinion, sort of overshadowed by the massive amounts of content that will be created. Maybe not necessarily as good. I mean, there will still be, I think, content that will shine through, but it will get more difficult if these really high qualified people will not sort of embrace this.
Right. And there's kind of two different ways that I look at the rise of generative AI, large language models, all of that stuff, whatever you want to call it. And one is it's changing the way that content is going to be created moving forward. And the language industry, to a large extent, is in the business of transforming content, not necessarily creating content. We do that too, right? But we're mostly in the business of transforming content. So our input is being changed. And I think, like you alluded to, there's a good argument to say that there's going to be more content created now than ever. So in a way, there's going to be more work for us.
Yeah.
The second way of looking at this is not necessarily how our input is being changed, but how our actual processes are going to be changed, because this is a revolutionary technology that is all about content. And essentially, you mentioned it's a very I forget the word that you said, but essentially it's a creative industry, right? I would call it a human centric industry. And the technology that we're dealing with now is a technology that fundamentally is trying to replicate humans. It's trying artificial intelligence, right? So
Yeah.
how is it going to be changing our industry for the better and for the worse, right? It's kind of the second question that comes up.
Yeah. Well, if you look back a bit, when machine translation was introduced, it was a time when nobody created content faster. The content was still created at the normal pace, and translators and localizers were sort of given a tool to catch up, to be more efficient with entering new markets and stuff like that. But at the moment, I think if you're looking at the purpose of what really localization is doing, you're right in saying that it's transforming content, but it's also about creating some sort of a response in the market you're trying to enter. So
Yeah.
with that in mind,
Well,
I
and
think
that's another strong trend is the move towards, and I was just talking about this yesterday with somebody, the move towards this overlapping function of localization and user experience, right?
yeah,
How
and
those two areas are merging together over
and
time.
with that in mind, I think it's really hard for artificial content to create the emotional response you are trying to get. So I think AI is still competing with crutches, so to say, against humans.
I like that. Yeah, it's competing,
Yeah,
but it's on crutches.
but there's a point I said, if companies decide to pick average, for example, localization solutions, they might very well be replaced by artificial intelligence, because they're not creating that added value in responses and reactions and actual functionality of the content that they're trying to do in that target market. So I think that's a great filter for the content. And yeah, I think that in a way sort of funnels it down a bit, because there will be overproduction of artificial content, but the great filter is that not all of it will be useful, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And yeah, and another, phenomenon that's happening is, the societal and just cultural shifts and the tolerance for, let's just call it, less than human quality content, right? And
Hmm.
I see this a lot nowadays. So like when I started creating like multimedia content for Nimdzi, right? Like we started
Hmm.
creating videos and stuff. That was, 5 years ago. It's not that long ago. There was this big push on like if you're going to do a video, like it's got to be high quality, it's got to be professional looking. It's there's certain standards. Get a microphone, have some good lighting around, and kind of put some effort into it so you have this good quality. Nowadays, like I don't know, have you been on TikTok? Right? It's like the video content that's going viral out there is just super low quality by the standards of 5 years ago. So I would make the argument like the cultural shifts and the expectational shifts are kind of decreasing as well.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. We're also being trained to have attention span of a goldfish, essentially.
oh God, it's
So
horrible. And
yeah,
the
so
pandemic didn't help. Social media doesn't help. But I remember when I used to be able to sit through a 60-minute meeting without needing a break.
yeah,
It's
you,
getting harder.
you're in the business of podcasts. It's a quite a challenge to have people keep attention for 60 minutes.
But
Imagine,
yeah.
imagine movies a few years ago, and now everyone's preferring TV shows. So essentially,
Mhm.
a long movie can just split
Yep.
attention
Well,
spans. Again, in terms of actually proving value of what you do as well, it's really hard to explain a value of rather complex topics such as localization in 15 seconds as well.
exactly, exactly. And this all kind of brings us to it. These shifting patterns in user behavior, expectations, and technology kind of brings us to one thing I wanted to ask about, just because your article touched on it, which is this concept of lang ops, right? And this is it's kind of achieved buzzword status in recent months. And I don't even know who to attribute it to, like who started using this word first. But lots
I
of
think
people
one of the yeah, I
who
think
what
one of the larger localization companies, it was Unibabel, or if I'm not wrong, some of the companies that invest a lot of time creating these manifestos and creating this
someone with
idea
a
that
good marketing department is who it is, right?
also yeah also but they are trying to, and actually quite successfully trying to attest to the characteristics of localization to development operations, which essentially localization is a discipline between development and operations, because in the development phase, localization is part of being into internationalization stage in a pseudo localization and testing and stuff like that, so that the software for the operations side functions well. So we are going from initial translation and localization into maintaining the strings with the release cycles and stuff like that. So it's more or less a perfect fit from the technology aspect, because localization is in the middle of software
Yep.
development and operations. Yeah,
And I kind of see
but
that as, you know, to me, lang ops. If you ask me, what do you define as lang ops? I would abstain from answering the question. Right? I'd refer you. I'd say here's some links to some articles discussing it, because I don't want to wade into that discussion. I have no desire. I'm too old, too much gray in my
I,
beard.
I, I think we're not really ready to provide a definition of what lineups is, because it's a new concept.
Fair.
And yeah, and it's, I think now it's just a thing that localization is trying to be, and it will
It's an
make a lot of,
aspiration, right?
yeah,
It's a
it will
goal.
have a lot
So
of, yeah, it will make a lot of mistakes along the way, one of which is the human aspect. In development operations, the human aspect is sort of nullified, or very low in terms of what a human has to do in order to orchestrate operation systems in localization. without human involvement, I think it renders useless. So yeah, there's a long way to go, and there will be a lot of mistakes made.
I like that. I like that. And I would say, like, in my mind, Lang Ops is very much a compromise or at least a negotiation between the competing forces that we have in our industry of technology and efficiency and human and culture and creativity, right? Because language, by its definition, is a very creative human endeavor, but yet we have this constant pressure to become more efficient and to leverage the latest technologies. And LangOps is the latest attempt to try to merge those two.
Yeah, as Marco said from Translated, it's the most human thing that we have,
I have a slide for
and
that. What do you know?
yes,
It's a
yeah,
good it's a good
you-
quote.
and when you look at it for from the creative perspective, we don't see a lot of technology involvement in painting, for example, or in music, and yeah, it's an interesting combination to be able to optimize and maximize the and squeeze out the juice from human creativity with words and make it so that we are on the border of maybe losing part of that creativity just by
Yeah.
overusing the stuff that we have now.
Well, and I like this. The reason I pulled this quote out is, and for those of you listening, not watching, this is a quote from Marco Trombetti, one of the founders of Translated over in Italy. He says, "Language is the most human thing out there. Language is the driving force of human evolution." And the reason I like this quote is not immediately apparent. It's that Translated is on the cutting edge of artificial intelligence. Like, they've been doing nowadays everybody's talking about artificial intelligence. Translated, and Marco Trombetti specifically, has been talking about and using artificial intelligence for years, way before it was cool, right? And for someone with such a technology mindset to still say language is the most human thing out there and it's the driving force behind human evolution is, I think it's a pretty powerful statement. And it shows these competing ideologies that we have, that we're in the center of in our industry.
Yeah, and I think he's in the right place because people with thinking like that should be in charge of creating these kinds of technologies.
Exactly. I'm just looking at the comments here. You've got your fan club representing in the comments here. Gary Leafman, hi Gary, says, Didzis hits the nail on the head with this one. LangOps operators, employees in these positions are subject to increased levels of stress. It's spot on. And that, of course, is a quote that I took directly from your article here, which leads us naturally into kind of the next topic. And what I liked about your article is it's about technology, but it's about humans, and it's about the effect that is happening with the human capital in our industry. And the first thing that you talk about is stress. So let me just read a quote from your article here and take a look at this. You say, stress has always been a killer of all sorts. Employees suffering from increased levels of stress often experience reduced work performance, lack of creativity, and in more extreme cases are forced to change jobs. A study by the Society for Human Resource Management found that stress was the top cause of employee turnover, with 41% of employees citing stress as the reason for leaving their job. The localization industry is no different in that regard. We see an increasing number of high-level localization professionals leaving work that they love doing just because it is not sustainable in the long term. And I'm going to keep reading here because the quote goes on. Later on, stress, closely related to stress, is the concept of burnout. And so I'll read here. Burnout is a common problem in the localization industry, and it is often caused by a product-centric approach, where localization is viewed as a support function, and its goals and challenges are often overlooked in favor of keeping the product cycle moving forward. This is what I was talking about with those competing forces, right?
Yeah.
Because localization has its own goals and challenges, and we're being asked or forced to figure out or to not sacrifice those goals in favor of the, at the altar of technology. Moving on, this can create a strained environment where supporting roles feel undervalued, particularly when the credit for achieving goals is attributed solely to the product or sales team. Additionally, the pressure to optimize budgets often leads to understaffing, which can contribute to burnouts. And, I can say, yeah, and amplify this more if you work on the vendor side, right? We have
Yeah.
a robust value chain in the language services industry. And the further down you get in that value chain, the more true this can be. Coming for
That's correct.
background,
Yeah.
I come from the vendor side, so I'm definitely biased in this regard. But it used to really gnaw at me when I'd see we did some really brilliant good work on the vendor side. Not me, had brilliant solutions architects and people working for us, and then the client would go, I'd speak at Lokeworld and talk about how brilliant they were and all of this innovation that they had implemented, and
Yeah.
not even mention it, right? So it's prevalent at all phases in the supply chain.
Yeah. If we start with the beginning of what you read out, it's actually one of the basic points of why this article came to mind. Yeah, as my title is revenue operations, so I talked to a lot of people on the buyer side as well, and I found this phenomenon in within 3 to 4 months. Uh, it's a very sensitive topic, so I'm not going too deep with it because people really don't want to talk about it publicly yet. But there are a lot of people that I talk to about maybe seeing what we can do together and help each other. And I had a lot of responses where people just, oh sorry, I'm just swapping out jobs, or I'm taking a pause, and just seeing really brilliant people just not being able to take it anymore. And yeah, it's probably, I'm not saying the technology is one of the main aspects of it. It's also the other part of the quote that you read is that localization is not measured against the right KPIs, right? So there are very clear, at least 4 things that you can consider for and attribute the success to localization, which is new customer acquisition in new markets, seeing the customer retention, increased engagement, and even sales and marketing results improve because of the local messaging in those target markets. So it's very easy to just shift the thinking a bit and attribute those things to not the product itself, not the success of how good the product is, but how good those different parts of messaging and localization actually are.
Well, it's hard, right? Because, and this is why I often refer to, like, what you're talking about is attributing revenue to return on
Yeah.
investment to localization. Like, in a word, is what is the ROI of localization? And this is a topic
Exactly.
that will not die. It's always going to be talked about because it's hard. It's not a clear, objective KPI. And, there's folks out there, like I'm thinking of Natalie Kelly, go check out the Born to Be Global blog. There's other folks out there that have talked about this and made some really good points on it. But I would argue that it's not something that I don't think we're ever going to really be able to solve, because if I have a product and I localize it into another market, how much of that revenue from that market gets attributed to me as a localization director, and how much of that revenue gets attributed to the original product team? There's always going to be a negotiation that needs to take place, and a buy-in from the senior management that says, yes, I do believe it's fair to allocate a certain amount to that.
Yeah, there was an interesting test that one of my connections shared with me. They had a case study, which also, as a result, proved the value of localization. The they had some of the languages done by AI exclusively with no human involvement, and that they had a pack of languages that they were doing with full translation and full localization teams. So
Uh-huh.
essentially compare the results of impressions and click-through rates and just general responses, and they were able to measure quite precisely what the value of localization in those cases were. So I think the A/B testing is something that product teams understand really well because
Yeah.
they do it on a regular basis, right?
Yeah.
So if localization teams try to speak their language to try and show the value via A/B testing, for example, just place the human localized product next to a untouched AI solution, you'll clearly see those results. But I think, yeah, you are right. It's one of the small tools to help, but it's a giant conversation. I think it's not going to be resolved overnight, right?
No, no, of course not. Of course not. So, bringing us back to the name of the article is "Human in the Loop." I believe. I forgot the exact name of it.
It
But
is.
let's first of all let's define our terms. What does that mean by human in the loop? And I've also heard this term. It might be Marco and translated popularizing this, or it might be scientific.
Human.
I'm not sure, but I've also heard machine in the loop, right? So, but
Okay.
what is? I know that's a clever marketing thing, right? But what does this mean, human in the loop?
Human in the Loop was one of the points in Multilingual's magazine where they talked about language operations manifesto. So Human in the Loop is just a name that characterizes that humans will actually be the guiding force for the technology in the localization industry, and we should always keep the human value intact, which is not I mean, it's not only referred to in terms of actual language production, it's also in, for me, it's also in the terms of those orchestrators that actually make localization infrastructures work, because they are not fully automated, and there are still people involved in delivering results. So I think human in the loop is meant in this LangOps manifesto as more towards the producing end result. But for me, it just sparked a conversation in my head about the other side of the people that orchestrate those systems.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. Going back to the stress and the burnout, and you say Society for Human Resource Management found stress was the top cause of employee turnover, with 41% of employees citing stress as the reason for leaving their job. And now it's come, and then you go on to cite some reasons why this is a specific challenge to our industry. What's the way out from this? Like, how? I mean, it's one thing to say there's a lot of stress, there's a lot of burnout, and trust me, I've managed people, I've managed teams for years. I've managed people that are burnt out. I've been burnout. I am not going to comment on my current status of burnout. But it's easy to talk about burnout. It's one of those things it's very easy to complain about. But what's the way out? What's the solution here?
Well, it depends on where the burning out is coming from. If it's something inside, a person should probably prioritize their own
Therapy.
well-being.
Get a gym
Therapy is good
membership.
for
Yeah.
healthy people as well, right? Uh, but in terms of localization, I think it's not a very specific issue. It's just a new issue, maybe a newer issue for us. And what can we do? In my article, I look at those some systems that actually empower the localization managers and localization orchestrators that are making all this happen, right? So, as I mentioned, software like Blackbird is phenomenal in that regard. They just give a lot of powerful tools to the project managers and localization managers to automate a lot of stuff, freeing up the time to focus on these maybe more humane tasks rather than just making all this meat grinder work. And essentially giving the tools that are not really hard to get into, but actually provide a lot of value and free up time, and that way they I think they contribute to reducing burnouts as well.
Yeah, and burnout's going to look very different depending upon going back to the supply chain. Where are we in that supply chain, right? Are we talking about the buyer, the client side professional? Are we talking about a LSP project manager? Or are we talking about the translator? We have here in the comments Vita mentions says, in fact, let me see if I can pull it up here. In fact, the actual doer does not even have a name. Going back to our conversation about who gets credit for things, the actual doer does not even have a name. In the best scenario, the agency has a name, potentially even not the endpoint agency, but an intermediate initial one has the chance to be known. And just kind of reiterating on the fact that we're working our butts off. A lot of people are working their butts off, and they're not getting credit. They're not getting the recognition for working their butts off. And let's go downstream to the translator, to use Vita's term, the doer, right? LSPs don't sell translation, they sell project management, right? It's the translator that's doing the translation. Unfortunately, I'm just saying, like, let's be real, the translators aren't usually invited to the table when they're creating the dev roadmaps for the latest technologies that are going to revolutionize the industry. And those technologies are usually focused on efficiency and can sometimes be misguided in their analysis of what's going to make the translator's job easier. I don't know any translators who were begging for machine translation post editing to be a thing. They've accepted it, they're working with it because the world has moved, and in order to be relevant, you have to know about machine translation, post editing, and stuff. But I don't see the translators getting excited about that. So, how do translators, what can translators do? What can linguists do? Or should they just change professions now? Should they take a course on technology? Should they develop a new skill set? Do nothing?
No, I mean, as you said, MTP was maybe not forced on the doers, but it was introduced, and if you are trying to
I
keep
forced it on a lot of doers when I was. I'll take the fall here. I'll be the bad guy. When I was a project manager, I had to force MTPE on a lot of translators who did not want to do it.
Yeah, but on a vendor side, I think what we can do is be some sort of mediary or an ambassador on behalf of the translator, and that's what Native does. Actually, we are trying to be as humane as possible in the rules that the client is trying to set, and the framework that we are trying to develop together. So our sort of central mission is to have a localization journey that helps you sleep at night. So, and it goes both ways. It goes towards vendors and it goes towards clients as well. But in regards to the doers, I think we can draw a very easy comparison to, for example, programmers. We also don't know a lot of the programmers that do the stuff. So it's unfortunately it's just the nature of the profession, I think. And we know translators that do artistic stuff, stories and stuff like that, but we don't hear about those everyday doers that in a similar way are just part of all the trickle down stuff that comes from the top and just ends up with them.
Yeah, and a lot of times these doers that we don't. I've been a doer before, right? I've also been the bad guy managing doers. But a lot of times these doers, we don't reap the benefits necessarily, because in theory, and you said it, right, the technology is going to make our lives easier and free us up, take away the boring menial tasks and free us up to do more interesting and significant and meaningful work. Now, what I've observed is that sometimes in practice, what that means is, okay, we're going to free up more time, and then the managers are going to assign us more work, right? So we're still working 12-hour days. We're just getting done twice as much.
Yeah, that's also one of the big questions. If we keep freeing up time to do more work, it's not going to end well. It's just a highway to really getting burnt out really quick.
Yeah.
But if we sort of embrace the technology that actually frees up time and then we do something meaningful with it, for example, as I say, human brain is not meant to be doing machine stuff, right?
Yeah.
So if we leave and embrace the technology that takes care of that side and automates as much as possible and just frees up time for the project manager, for the localization manager, for anyone just to be human in these situations, to make connections, to have the ability to listen to the client more and feed all this information towards creating a better product alongside the technology that helps with the everyday stuff. And I think that's the way to go forward. We have to have technology that sort of respects the human time, I think, because now it's not happening that
Yeah.
much, I think.
And you mentioned this is kind of what you do at Native Localization, which is to kind of serve as that ambassador or intermediary and help negotiate between the humans and the machines, or the people pushing the machines and the people pushing creativity. Tell me, just for some context, tell me a little bit more about Native Localization. What do you guys do? What kind of clients do you work with? All that stuff.
Yeah. So we started around 8 years ago under a different name. So alongside with partners from Nimdzi, last winter we repositioned ourselves a bit. So it's been an exciting journey as native from last January. Uh, what we do essentially, we work in the IT field. We work with software companies. We work with product developers. It might be fintech, it might be health tech, and any type of product that they're trying to get into more markets than domestic US market. So and yeah, and what sets us apart, I think, is that translators have been good to us. We've been good translators, and we try to emphasize that uh, good relationships are what essentially keeps the business running, right?
It's true.
Because yeah, and it goes both. We always emphasize that it goes both ways because nothing ends with us, and we are sort of just a service facilitator, and we can do those things as good as we can. But if we are neglecting the people that actually do it, or we are being neglected to the or not inflexible to the clients that actually need stuff done in a certain way,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, and the technologies that I mentioned before, they're actually it's an interesting situation because I think not as you said, I think 5 or 6 years ago, the bigger clients they went to the big companies
Yep.
because of the technology, right?
Yep.
Now we are in the situation where this technology is available to us,
Yep.
so and and the flexibility is not necessarily there for the big guys. So this is
Yep.
an interesting thing in the market where we can actually provide the service and the scalability of a large company while being super flexible and just being there for them, for everyone essentially. So yeah, that's what we're trying to do,
Very good.
being a friend being a friend to everyone. So
Yeah, being a partner. Yeah,
yeah.
I remember. I would even say like 5 to 10 years ago. Back in the day, I remember there was this big push. A lot of organizations were moving more towards like single sourcing, right? I'm talking about like the big guys, right? So they didn't want to be dealing with freelancers, certainly not, right? But they didn't want to be dealing with 10 different agencies. They wanted to have one partner. And oh, by the way, they wanted that one partner to also provide the technology, right?
Yeah.
And, back in the day, we didn't have, you mentioned, the Nimdzi Technology Atlas mapping like 900 different language technologies. Back in the day, it was like, do you want Trados or Deja Vu, right? Like there weren't a lot of options out there, right? And nowadays people have options, and they don't need to find a services, which is to say a translation provider that also has their own technology. And in fact, I think a lot of organizations through that period of single sourcing learned that they don't want that, because some of these organizations found themselves in a situation where they were very unhappy with their vendor, but they were locked into the technology because they'd built all these
Yeah.
integrations, or they were very unhappy with the technology, but they didn't want to leave the vendor, right? So I think that whole era is what allowed for this proliferation of language technology to come out there, which has only benefited the industry because it's allowed smaller players, like native localization, right? I mean, I hate to call any
Yeah.
LSP small, but let's call boutique
let's,
players,
let's yeah, that's a good word.
specialized players like native localization. No, and it's not a joke because, we deal with vendor management, project management, and outsourcing, right? And so any LSP is scalable because if you get a big job tomorrow, you can just assign more translators to it, and you might need to
Exactly.
go onboard those translators, but that's why you make the big bucks because you're good with that. You manage that supply
And,
chain.
and better yet, you can introduce a new technology within hours. So you basically work by requirement. So we will not be holding five different licenses unless we need them, right?
Right.
So yeah, it's. I think I think the industry in a way is healing because of that.
Right. Yeah. No, that's what I see it too. I think we kind of went down a wrong path as an industry, and now we're coming
Yeah,
back. It's not going to be the last wrong path that we go down.
of course, of course.
Well, speaking of which, going down wrong paths, like where do you see from a practical standpoint with not advent, but I would call it proliferation, I would call it mainstreaming of AI and large language models. It's not new technology, right? A lot of people were talking about it like it's new. It's been around. Now it's just becoming more mainstream, right?
Yeah.
So it's reaching that point where it's accessible, I should say. So with the increased accessibility of artificial intelligence and everything that begets, where do you see the next? Where's the industry going? What trends do you think are coming?
What are the next mistakes?
Yeah,
I thi-
basically, yeah.
yeah.
What's the next wrong
Yeah.
path that we're going down?
I recently read an interesting article about uh, basically using AI generated content to train, which was sort of creating a huge
Was that
pile
Taos?
from.
Where's that article from?
Oh, I have to check on my feed because I shared it and
Okay.
it
No, it's
yeah,
just
but
I've talked to people. I think I've talked to
yeah.
Taos about that before. They've done stuff like that, and I don't understand that concept. But anyways, sorry to interrupt. Keep going.
No. That's it's yeah, it's essentially what could actually present itself as a very affordable option. And I think that's something we have to really be careful about because if artificial intelligence generates content and humans are not checking it and we are directly feeding it back into these models to train AI data, again, we are just creating a spiral
Yeah.
of inaccurate information. And then if you are using something like that to publish content which might not be really precise, I think that's one of the biggest issues. I mean, there was even this lawyer in the news. I think you heard about it
Oh yeah.
when he created like a argument in court just by using AI
It's wrong. It's
and
just
the AI
wrong.
essentially hallucinated, and that was fun.
Yeah.
And not fun for him, but fun for everyone else. But yeah, I think that's something that's going to we have to be careful about because there will be this uh, attraction to making it cheaper, I think. But yeah, but in terms of good stuff, this I think this specter of human involvement in content creation, it has to happen, right? Because we are seeing some these talented people that had created content before without AI. If they combine that, it's overall better for everyone because they can create a lot more content in a shorter matter of time, which probably compensates them better as well financially. And
Assuming the pricing models don't change, right?
they will.
That's the
Always.
that's the problem. Is like the pricing. It's all follow the money, right? It's about how are people getting compensated for their work, and if you follow the money, then 9 times out of 10, the people defining the pricing structures are not necessarily the people that understand how things work. They're upper managers or middle managers that, people defining machine translation, post editing, discounts, and pricing structures. I hate to say it, but they're not always the people that actually understand what are the real benefits. They understand enough to say, okay, machine translation is going to give me some efficiency, and therefore I should be getting a discount. I feel like that discount should be 15%, right? But it's not necessarily a real, right? And I feel like that's kind of, there's a lot of people talking about AI, hey, myself included, that don't understand exactly what they're talking about. And I think that can be dangerous when we start negotiating. And it could just be one LSP out there that screws it up for the rest of us. One
Yeah,
LSP
yeah.
out there that says, hey, I'm going to be giving 70% discounts because I'm using XYZ trained large language model. And it could be complete bullshit, right? They
Yeah.
could be running at a loss. But guess what? Now everyone in the industry on the buyer side is going to start expecting those discounts, right?
Yeah, but yeah, I was just thinking about that, and it's also not something new, right? It happened before with
Yeah, that's why I
when
can say this because this
yeah,
is based upon my experience. This
yeah,
isn't a
yeah,
projection. I'm
exactly.
not a
When
futurist.
when yeah, when buyers learned about cat tools and translation memories and machine translation, it's the same thing again, and I think it will AI will present the same issues. There will be different levels of vendors and there will be different levels of buyers as well, ones that will prioritize pricing over anything else, and there's hardly anything you can do apart from just being the voice of reason and trying to explain and educate stuff
Yep.
and be
Yep.
vocal about why things cost that much and why the value is actually hidden behind a higher level of investment. So I think yeah, it's also it's again it's different buyers and different vendors, and it's a remaining issue that's been here for ages.
Yeah. Yeah. Nothing. Like I said, there's nothing new under the
Nothing
sun,
new.
right?
Exactly.
It is what it is, and what it has been, and will continue to be.
Yeah.
But you sum it up. I'm going to go back to the article here because we're running out of time. This conversation has gone quick for me. You say the localization evolution is just starting to take off its training wheels, driven by technological innovation and the companies that push its boundaries. While these advancements can sometimes be seen as a threat to jobs, it's important to reframe them as an opportunity to refocus on the core values of the industry. As professionals, we should be leveraging technology to enhance communication and connection. By prioritizing the well being of our people, we can ensure the long term sustainability of the industry and continue to attract and retain the skilled and passionate talent who make it thrive. This is the perfect time to prove that innovation is not just about being passionate about technology, it is also about being compassionate towards the people in the loop. And I love that because when people use the word innovation, 9 times out of 10, they're talking about technology. And I'm not a tech guy. I'm a process guy. I'm a people manager, in my soul, right? And there's so much innovative stuff that you can do from a process perspective or from a people perspective. I'm thinking of, I'm sure you know Diego over at Creative Words in Italy, right? Everyone knows Diego,
Yeah.
or everyone knows his glasses, I should
Yeah,
say,
yeah, everyone knows.
right? He's a good Instagram follow. But Creative Words, they've gone to a 4-day work week with, that's innovative to me. It has nothing to do with technology. They're, of course, using technology to support it, but that's innovation from a human perspective. And there's other
Yeah,
companies out there doing innovative stuff like that too. But I really love that.
yeah, and also yeah, uh, 4-day work week for a localization vendor is something to applaud because Yeah, I would love to hear how he achieved that and have a talk about that. But what you said before, processes and innovation and technology shouldn't always be about maximizing the productivity. I
Yep.
think processes should also have this added value of taking care of the people that you task these things with. So yeah, and that and we have, as I said, we have people that love being in the language industry. They are huge assets and provide huge value to everyone. But taking care of those people is I think the more it's more important than being super productive. And then
Got
yeah,
to treat them well.
definitely.
Well, any last closing thoughts before I start wrapping this up here for good?
No, essentially, I love to talk about this. So anyone listening, just drop me a message if you want to talk further about this, and yeah, and let me know your thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah. For those of you guys listening, either live or watching the recording or listening to the podcast, make sure to go follow Didzis on LinkedIn and social media so you can. He's active over there. You can keep up to date on all the stuff he's talking about. Once again, this is, if you want to read his full article, it is in the June issue of Multilingual Magazine on page 53. It's called The Human in the Loop. If you're a digital subscriber, of course, you can access it online. If you're not a subscriber to Multilingual, then you should be. Like, why aren't you? Go subscribe to Multilingual. It's a great resource for our industry. So, with that, DJs, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Really
Thank you for
appreciate
having
it.
me.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
been a really
likewise.
interesting conversation. So,
Yeah.
I'll take us out here. Ladies, gentlemen, we are out of time for today. If you enjoyed this episode of Nimdzi Live, join us again on Thursday when I'll be talking to Lois Searle about her recent article in Multilingual Magazine. And I love talking to Lois. Haven't chatted with her for a long time, so it'll be a good conversation. I appreciate our guest today, DJs. I appreciate my colleagues here at Nimdzi Insights doing all the hard work. I appreciate everyone in our industry who contributes to industry research. And finally, I appreciate you, the audience, who are joining us live today. All of the dialogue and chat, questions, comments, and especially criticisms. And I look forward to next time. Cheers.